When I became UTEP's president, it was 1988, and I understood that the university was at a critical crossroads. And I understood, too, that my vision of UTEP's huge potential wasn't really shared universally, either on or off the campus. And so a lot of what I tried to do initially was to address UTEP's profound identity crisis. Our focus had been on being a regional university and Texas mining school. So we started with a regional focus. But by the 1960s, and like many other regional universities, we'd become convinced that the single path toward greater glory in higher education would require us to emulate prestigious research universities, however their different settings, constituencies, and missions. Too many of our people in the community and on the campus perceived our low-income Hispanic students and our border location as liabilities to be avoided. Some faculty found humor in placing Harvard on the Border bumper stickers on their cars. My goal as a new president was to shift our collective focus from self-deprecation toward a greater appreciation of who we were and whom we served, to convert such perceived liabilities as our large Hispanic population into assets, and to achieve far greater authenticity in our institutional aspirations and our efforts to achieve them. Articulating this bold vision and building the confidence and the courage, and I heard that word courage before, it is true, it requires a tremendous amount of courage to aggressively pursue a bold vision. It's required creativity and resilience, but I would say most of all, it's required a thick skin. Criticism just had to be deflected while we worked to build this foundation. Data were essential. Deborah, we had to learn more. We had to learn more about our region and our responsibility for its human and economic development. We studied data on the young people UTEP served and, importantly, those we weren't serving, and we began to identify and celebrate our distinctive features, all toward a goal of transforming UTEP into an institution better aligned with and responsive to the needs of the surrounding region. What we saw when we looked at ourselves wasn't always pleasing. Particularly troubling to many of us was that although nearly all of UTEP students were from El Paso County, a disproportionate share were graduates of a relatively small number of more affluent and more Anglo high schools. UTEP simply didn't look like El Paso. Large numbers of young Hispanics in our community were being denied access to social mobility through education, and they were written off as not being college material. We began to understand better UTEP's critically important public university role and our responsibility for the dreams and the aspirations of all area residents. Our data also reminded us that educational institutions in the region from pre-K to post-secondary formed a closed loop. More than 80% of UTEP students are graduates of El Paso area high schools, and 2/3 of the teachers are graduates of UTEP. Despite our mutuality of interests, we endlessly blamed each other for our frustrations. UTEP faculty blamed the schools for not sending us better prepared students and threatened to raise admission standards, and the schools blamed UTEP for not sending them better prepared teachers. Clearly, the conversation had to shift toward accepting our shared responsibility to increase educational opportunities for all young people and to leverage each other's contributions to enhancing educational attainment across the board. To that end, and as William mentioned, in 1991, we formed the El Paso Collaborative for Academic Excellence, a partnership that includes, to this day, all 9 school districts in our county, El Paso Community College, UTEP, and civic leaders working together toward a goal of raising educational aspirations and attainment across our region. Again, our focus was always on data, on sharing them, analyzing them, and ensuring that they, not our biases, opinions, and assumptions, would drive our efforts to align curricula assessments and standards along the entire pre-K-16 educational pathway. This was a vertically integrated educational continuum, and we worked very hard on creating longitudinal databases so that we were tracking student progress all the way through the entire educational pathway. We developed a robust range of dual credit programs in early college high schools and completely changed the conversation from blame to collaboration and cooperation. We, over the long run, I think, have accomplished, most importantly, the trust that we've built among all of the participants in this collaborative. We trust each other. When newcomers, up-and-comers enter into the El Paso area, whether they be superintendents or other business leaders, there's always a place where they can come together and learn. The outcomes tell the story best. In 1991, our high school graduation rates in El Paso were among the lowest of all major metro areas in Texas, and there was, in particular, an unacceptable disparity between the graduation rates in high school of Hispanic and Anglo graduates. Today, those high schools in El Paso have the highest graduation rates of all Texas major metro areas, and the gap between Hispanic and Anglo high school graduation rates has narrowed considerably. El Paso County districts now also rank first in Texas in the percentage of high school graduates who complete the state's advanced curriculum, and first in the number of low-income high school graduates who enroll in post-secondary education. So we've changed the aspirational and achievement levels across the community. As a result of that, of course, UTEP has grown, the community college has grown, and that means that more El Pasoans are aspiring to and being successfully prepared for post-secondary attainment, which is our goal. Especially encouraging has been the decline in the percentage of UTEP's entering students who require developmental education. That work is now being done in the high schools by our colleagues there through a collaborative effort that has paid off richly. We're also very, very proud at UTEP of now mirroring the demographics of El Paso in our student population. We look like El Paso. It's a big, important goal. We are El Paso's university. If you're a public university in a large metro area with a Latino population of the size of ours, you should look like that community, and we do. It's also important to note that more than 60% of the top 10% high school graduates in El Paso now choose to enroll at UTEP. So we've changed not only the perception of UTEP as a point of access, but also as a university that offers excellence, because the top 10% students, as you all know, are automatically admitted to public universities in Texas, and so they're able to make choices, and they choose UTEP. Now, our next step had to be then to ensure that UTEP's policies, procedures, practices, and so on weren't barriers to our students' achievement. And we've worked really hard on trying to improve ourselves in the second decade. So the first decade of the 90s was the K-12 decade, the foundation laying. Second decade has been really focusing on everything that we do to try to respond to our students' needs. We know that a toolkit that's filled with ideas that work in other settings won't likely be useful at UTEP without very thoughtful recalibration. And our analyses have enabled us to change the one-size-fits-all policies and metrics such as graduation rates, which I think everybody knows. I've spent half my life trying to debunk. And I think we're making a lot of progress. So what I would say to you is that this has been a long-term marathon run. This is not a sprint. It takes a lot of time and collaboration, as William said, to achieve the goals that we have achieved. We have increased by 85% the number of degrees awarded every single year. Over the past 10 years, we've excuse me, we have more than 80% Latino graduates, which is a huge accomplishment and a total shift in our student demographics of our graduates. And as we've improved our excellence to compete for research dollars, we knew that the business model would be extraordinarily important to bring research dollars in to help create jobs on the campus, to create the kinds of experiences that will lead our students to go on to graduate school and all kinds of wonderful careers, particularly in STEM, because that is our legacy. Our annual research expenditures are now ranking us fourth. 7 is a number that I want to say in just a minute. Ranking us fourth among all Texas public universities in federal grant funding. So among 37 public universities, we rank fourth in federal research funding. But what I'm really excited about, and where I'll end, is that UTEP this year was ranked number 7 by Washington Monthly in their annual college rankings, placing us between number 6, Stanford, and number 8, Harvard. Now, this is a neighborhood that we find quite compatible, but we've heard that Stanford and Harvard wonder who moved into the neighborhood. We are very much applauding what Washington Monthly is trying to do. And, you know, for many, many years, we chose to ignore U.S. News and World Report. We simply ignored it. We got beat up by it once in a while in the media, but we ignored it because it would have forced us to make investments that would have been unwise in our setting, to drive investments toward greater selectivity and toward the prestige factors in U.S. News and World Report, endowment size, alumni giving, all of those kinds of things that lead to the kind of rankings that they repeat every single year because the same private elite institutions end up at the top. We chose to ignore that. When Washington Monthly came along and began to consider other factors, especially the impact of universities on student social mobility, on research, and on service to a region and to the nation, Washington Monthly has begun a totally new way of thinking about university rankings. We must support them in these efforts. I'm not so much concerned about UTEP's number 7 or number 12 last year. Of course, I love them. But what I'm really concerned about is advocating for a different way of thinking about the impact of universities in this country. We've simply got to go there because U.S. News and World Report is caught in mid-20th century America, and we've got to rescue them from that position. So let me just say one other thing, and that is that what is really exciting to me about the transformation that has occurred at UTEP over the past 25 years is our change in attitudes. We're now comfortably and proudly authentic in our UTEP skin, and we're joyful knowing that we've made the huge progress in validating our success by becoming the very best UTEP we can be, not trying to fashion ourselves after somebody else's definition of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you.